Hello and welcome to Sit and See Live. I'm Dr. Jared Jones, research specialties, ancient systems of meditation, the cognitive science of meditation, Buddhist philosophy, and the philosophy of science. I'm going live in this class for the 85th time today. It's a while now. Time has flown by teaching this class. And today I was hoping that we might do something with a bit more of a plan than usual. Usually I just respond to the chat and we end up doing whatever kind of practice people are interested in for the day. But today I was hoping we might do something in particular, which is to go from an intensive breath meditation into a short body scanning meditation. And that we would do this in a seated position to keep it simple. Um, if everyone's okay with that, we will jump straight into it and do question and answer after. Okay. We'll just wait a few minutes to let people join. Hmm. Been an interesting day. Been chatting with quite a few of people that are taking the course and was reminded once again in terms of intensive breath meditation practice, not a lot of people have even if they've been meditating for a while, not so many people have actually been struggling with their mind. Just really struggling with their mind in terms of trying to develop the mental qualities that are related to meditation, despite the fact that in theory that's what you're doing when you sit down every time. Welcome, Jay. Welcome, Luck. And I was reminded once again today that the just how incredible this very short practice of following your breath is. In the last 90 days, I've had a number of people tell me doing this technique for as little as 5 days in some cases, that they've noticed how messy their mind is. They've started to notice the mental qualities that they have from day to day that are problematic, that are screwing up their life in various ways, and that their mind has become more clear, and they're seeing past actions and going, "Wow, I really don't like these behavior patterns that I had in the past." And all of this comes from a practice that is literally 5 minutes a day to lay the foundation for real meditation training, to see your mind more clearly, to see the faults of meditation more clearly. Legitimately only takes 5 minutes of real effort a day. And I'm been really encouraged, humbled really that this technique that I got from one of my teachers is so beneficial. I'm really surprised that something like this isn't taught more widely because it's so powerful and so beneficial. In any case, we have a few of the regulars here now, so why don't we jump into the practice? So, like I said today, we're going to jump straight into a practice, and what we're going to do is we'll do a miniature intensive breath session, so it won't be a full session, and then we'll do a short body scan, so somewhere between 8 and 15 minutes, depending upon how my brain is working today. And then we'll do Q&A afterwards, okay? So if you would join me, we're going to do it in a seated position. So one of the great texts on meditation written by a modern yogi who spent many years in retreat said that something that can be beneficial is to take a piece of cloth and to set it in your lap like this. And you can use this cloth to hold the weight of your arms a little bit so that you're not having to hold your arms elevated up in the air. So we'll start with just setting the posture. So one short exercise that's quite beneficial is just to do circles in one direction and circles in the other. Keep your spine straight. The spine is staying straight and it's not twisted, it's not bent from side to side. The movement is coming from the hips. And this just loosens up all the little bits of tension in the hips and the lower back. And then to get the middle back, just rock forward and back. And that will tighten and loosen the muscles in the mid back. Once again, you're keeping your spine relatively straight and the movement coming from the hips. Nonetheless, you'll feel that when you lean forward, your back has to tense, has to contract in order to hold you up. And then once you rock back, it relaxes, but you have to contract a little bit in the front. So, like this, the muscles that are basically from the middle of the back and the middle, sort of the torso, middle of the torso in the front, are alternating in terms of contraction and release. So, very simple exercise, but works quite well. And then some of you have seen this before. If you keep your hands where they are, and I'll do my best to explain it from this distance, but I've covered it in previous videos. Imagine that your shoulders are like the pedals on a bicycle. So the shoulder in on the right hand side, just to show you, we'll start by elevating it, and then you bring it forward, keeping your hands where they are. You bring it forward, rotate it down, rotate it back, still pressing down as you bring it back. And then while it's all the way back, you lift it up. So, in brief, you're trying to circle the shoulder in the widest possible manner while keeping the hands in the position in your lap where you're going to have them for meditation, which is important because this will then make your shoulders very comfortable for having your hands in this position for a period of time. So, when you do it with both shoulders alternating like bicycle pedals, it looks like this. So, my back is staying where it is. The shoulders have isolated the movement and I'm stretching them against each other. So when my front shoulder is all the way forward, my back shoulder is all the way back. And while my front shoulder is all the way up, my back shoulder is all the way down. And then they switch. And then after you've done that a few times in one direction, switch to the other direction. So now the shoulders are rolling backwards, but you're still stretching that tissue in the front and the back of the upper spine in the most extreme way that you can, but obviously don't injure yourself. This would be a pretty silly way to do it. And then from another one of my teachers, just very simple to release the back of the neck. Just tighten the arms, the shoulders back and up as much as you can. You'll feel that tightens your neck. And then just release the shoulders all the way down. So pull the shoulders back and lift them up as high as you can to the back of your neck, but don't crunch your neck down. Keep your neck where it is. Lift the shoulders up as hard as you can and then release them down. So keeping your head where it is, shoulders go back, they lift up as hard as you can. Don't tense your neck, just the shoulders, then release. So hopefully this allows you to feel that Upper back in particular is a little more comfortable. Shoulders and neck should be a little more comfortable. The only thing we haven't done is the rotational aspect of the spine. So, to do the rotational aspect, all those little tiny muscles along the spine on either side, start from the very bottom, placing your awareness in the tailbone, and turn each vertebra as best you can, one at a time, until that vertebra reaches maximum turn to the right hand side. And then turn the one above it, and the one above it, and the one above it, and carry on like this until you've turned every vertebra as much as you can. And then you're going to finally turn the vertebra in the neck. And once everything is twisted, breathe all the way in, and you'll feel that stretches everything that you have turned. And then starting from the bottom of the spine, with the mind and the tailbone again, just release all the muscles. Don't turn yourself to the front, release the muscles and let the spine return to a natural position. Then turning the other way, mind and the tailbone. Turn the lowest part of the spine you can feel, inside the hips even if you can. Then the next vertebra, the next. Keeping the hands in the position that they'll be for meditation. When the spine has reached full rotation from top to bottom, breathe in all the way and feel that extra stretch you get from the breath. And then when you breathe out, starting from the mind and the tailbone, just release all those little muscles in a cascade up the spine until you return to the middle. Do just a brief counter turn and then relax. Now, having done all of this, hopefully you can feel that because we did circles with the lower part of the body, the hips are a little looser. Because we rocked in the middle part of the body, the mid back should feel okay. And because we worked on the shoulders, that's actually where most of the pain in the upper back comes from, is from the shoulders. And a lot of the pain in the neck also comes from the shoulders being too close to the ears. And then finally, our spines and necks and so forth often get twisted, and one little group of muscles will get tense on one side or the other. And that'll make the spine uncomfortable. So hopefully you feel now that from top to bottom the spine is more comfortable than it was. And the hands should feel quite comfortable now because we've stretched out everything connected to the hands, leaving the hands where they need to be for the session. Okay, so now that the body is as comfortable as it can be for 10 or 15 minutes of meditation, let's start with the breath. So I'm not going to go over the instructions for this because probably you should know it by now. All right. So place your mind on a patch of skin inside your nostril or near the nostril, wherever you feel the breathing through the nose most intensely. And you're going to place your mind there with great force and then count the breath from 1 to 7, 7 to 0. When you reach 0, that's the only time you can move your body. Other than that, stay completely still and place the mind on that patch of skin and the counting with really great force. 3, 2, 1, begin. Okay. Place the mind into the toes on both feet and just to give you a little bit more instruction on that, when I say place your mind there, don't imagine it, don't visualize it, don't try to figure it out or analyze it. Simply put as much of your attention in the actual tactile sensations that you detect or observe in that patch of skin. Ideally, if you've been doing this for a while, you want to put so much of your attention there that it seems like the center of your awareness moves down or moves over or moves into the area that you're observing. If that doesn't happen today, that's okay. But just bear in mind that if you can get a high percentage of your awareness into the act of observing some portion of your tactile field, your awareness will, the center of your awareness will seem to move to that location. You don't need to imagine that happening. I'm just letting you know that's a sign that you're putting enough force into the activity. Next, actually, let's start over. So place the mind in the toes, balls of the feet, the arches and the tops of your feet, heels, ankles, calves, knees, lower thighs, your upper thighs, the front, sorry, the hips, hip joints, front of the pelvis, back of the pelvis, squeeze the mind into the tailbone, anus, perineum, actual organ. Come to rest at the tip of the organ or the most sensitive point. Now find the top of your hips in the back of your body, about 3 inches of tissue above the waist, that whole ring of tissue that surrounds the lower abdomen. That's your waist area. So bring your awareness into the waist, about 4 or 5 inches of tissue from the top of the waist in the front to the solar plexus. That's what I call the diaphragm belt. So become aware of the ring of tissue surrounding the body that's encompassing that 4 or 5 inches of tissue, the diaphragm belt. Ignoring the collarbones and the scapula or shoulder blades, if you can. Try to become aware of the chest as if you had no arms. Front of the chest, back of the chest. Now the tops of both of your shoulders, front of your shoulders, sides of your shoulders, and the backs of your shoulders, armpits, bicep region, elbows, forearms, wrists, palms, and the back of your hands. For your fingers, become aware of the first knuckle on all the fingers, and then the second knuckle, and the third knuckle, and the fingertips. Now slide back up to the neck, the lower third of your neck, the middle third, upper third, and the joint between the neck and the skull, back of your scalp, left side, right side, left ear, right ear, forehead, left eyebrow and left eye, right eyebrow and right eye, nose, left cheek, right cheek, not your top lip, but your upper lip area, not your bottom lip, but your lower lip area, and your chin. Now your top lip, bottom lip, become aware of the skin inside your mouth, inside your cheeks, your teeth and gums, roof of your mouth, below your tongue, and your tongue. Move the awareness to the tip of the tongue, and slide the awareness back to the throat and become aware of the throat. From the throat, as best you can, move up, directly upward through the center of the skull and you should arrive at the back third of your skull, but become aware of the entire top of your skull. Okay, open the eyes and relax your mind. Don't do anything in particular. Just observe what your mind does as it returns to normal functioning. Okay. Questions? Hello, Cookie. Hello, Data. So, this technique of body scanning, as I've said before, tons of benefits. My wife's father is in the special forces, and I've heard from more than one special forces person. They actually train uh, special forces guys to do body scanning meditation because it makes your mind so calm. It can help you fall asleep, even behind enemy lines when your life is on the line, when you could be killed, literally, because you're surrounded by the enemy. It can make your mind so calm you can fall asleep. So, extremely effective practice in terms of making the mind and the whole nervous system at the level of the body, even calm down. So, this is part of why I teach this technique as the second technique. If you already have the ability to hold your mind somewhere for a period of time through doing intensive breath, and especially if that has matured somewhat so that your awareness is pooling in the place where you've put it, then when you start doing body scanning and you're moving the center of your awareness through the body, tremendous benefits. Tremendous benefits. Lots of the dysfunction we have as emotional beings, even according to modern science, they say, for example, that emotions and emotional trauma and emotional patterns, part of that is stored in the physical body. And one of the really interesting things that happens with body scanning, which is another reason I like putting it second in terms of training because it also has this effect is that as you go through the body, and maybe, for example, I hate to use a slightly controversial example, but it's an interesting one. Maybe throughout your entire life, you have never put your awareness on your abdomen, except when you have a lot of anxiety, that you have a habit of feeling nauseous or butterflies in your stomach or kind of doing this kind of thing, whatever, putting more attention on the abdomen and sort of this whole area through here only when you feel anxiety, where you're going, oh man, right? This sort of thing in the diaphragm region. But today, you go through that area with a mind that is radically calm. And the habit in that area is to only be engaged in terms of your attention when the mind is not calm. And you're going through and retraining the nervous system that actually, when my mind goes here, I'm still calm, right? And so, to put it sort of poetically, you can use a calm mind to go through the entire bodily system and clear out the emotional trauma, the emotional patterns, etc., related to the way that your mind normally grabs onto all the tissues in your body. For example, quite a few people, including myself, one of my big problems is that I get a stiff neck. Quite a few people do this to exaggerate. They go like this to hide the soft bits. It's a symptom of anxiety. And then they do this with their neck to make this smaller. How many times have you guys seen this sort of thing? Right? And so if you come through with your awareness and you just place it into the back of the neck and the shoulders. This is part of the reason, by the way, I spend, even in my short body scans, so much time on the shoulders, breaking the neck into three pieces, etc. We could do that with other parts of the body, of course, but problem areas, shoulders, top of the shoulders, neck, etc. Right, where we're storing a lot of anxiety quite often as modern people. Not only that, if we're looking at our phone all the time, we do this sort of thing, which, by the way, if you do look at your phone all the time, I recommend you get in the habit of looking at it like this instead of like this. If you don't want to be a hunchback when you get older. So just by going through the body in terms of this practice again and again and again with a much more clean, much more calm awareness in all of the areas of the body where normally that part of the body is only engaged because you have negative emotion, it starts to clean up the nervous system and change the patterns that you have in terms of the use of your muscles and so forth. So it's quite interesting. Quite interesting. If we were looking at it from a traditional Chinese medical perspective or a tantric perspective, also, you don't just have a body, and whether you believe this or not so important. But another way to look at it is that same thing in the subtler system that you have running through your course system, along with your mind comes these sort of substances that move around and move through the system. And as you take your mind, and instead of your mind being spread out like this, running around with all sorts of wild activity, you bring the mind into and you pool the mind with all of these substances that come along with it in one place and make those substances much more dense because all of your mental activity is pooled in one place. And then you put that bang into the hand, right? So in the Tibetan classics, they say where the mind goes, the winds, the mental winds, which are these subtle substances, they also go. So along with you bringing your attention into an area, you're bringing in theory, you're bringing these other substances in, which then you're moving through the body as you move the mind through the body, which also has a beneficial effect on your emotional well-being and also probably your physical well-being. I mean, I think, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure there's some research out there in terms of better health outcomes after surgeries and so forth for people doing body scanning types of meditation. And of course, I don't want to put that on the side of, oh yes, it's all down to the subtle body or something, because that sounds a bit weird. But um, I do know, for example, that if you do certain practices, mm, how do I put this without sounding too strange? If you do certain practices, you can not just bring more mental energy to an area, but blood and so forth comes along with that mental attention. And so with more nutrients, more, I don't know what specifically because I'm not a doctor, of course, but with a little bit better blood flow, the healing or prognosis becomes a bit better. Also, I think with a calmer mind, healing prognosis becomes better as a general principle. Not obviously not a universal kind of thing, and I'm not claiming to be a medical professional, but at least in my understanding. So, yeah, benefits are very, 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 very high for something that seems so mundane, you know? Not to mention, if you're trying to attain concentration as a layperson, body scanning practices teach your mind how to get very calm very quickly. So let's say that you had an hour and you wanted to do the best Zen practice that you could. Normally, what happens is your mind's very excited, or it's very angry and depressed, or it's very bored. And it takes, because of these three factors, roughly speaking, too angry or depressed, too bored, or too excited, it takes the mind maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes to calm down. And then the mind is just then starting to maybe do the practice 30 minutes in, or sometimes longer, of a session where you're just sitting, for example. So instead of that, 2 minutes, bang, bring the mind into a much calmer state, much more focused state, much quieter state with intensive breath. Then 5 minutes, 10 minutes body scanning meditation. The mind's very calm and lucid because if you do my body scan where we stop at the top of the head, this makes the mind more lucid instead of making it more dull. And then you do your just sitting practice, right? So within 8 minutes to 15 minutes, you get the mind to a very high quality. Then you do this more difficult practice at a higher quality for 40 minutes or 45 minutes or 50 minutes. You see what I mean? Instead of pretty lukewarm for 30 minutes or 40 minutes, kind of okay for the remainder of the time. and, and then you're getting sleepy and kind of droopy by the end of the session. You know what I mean? So this is how you can start to use these techniques as a toolkit to improve the other types of meditation you might be trying to do. Same thing with your mantra practices. If you have mantras, intensive breath, short body scan, mantra practice. Short, intensive breath, body scan, deity yoga. Short, intensive breath, body scan, qigong, neigong, the other internal arts practices that are out there, right? So these practices then enhance whatever it is you're trying to do. Yeah. Also in the way that I teach them, and this will be the last bit since there are no questions coming in, but please do pop in with questions if you have one. Um, I like going to the body not just because of all these benefits, which are many, and there are more that I haven't mentioned, but I like going to the body because you can start using your body, and bodily awareness tends to make the mind more calm, which is a really important benefit to a mind that's very distracted. You can start to use the body as the object of meditation in real life. When you're doing things, you can continue developing your practice while you're not on the cushion. So I just on the foundation, Five Foundations of Meditation playlist, I just put a few things there from the retreat we recently did for walking meditation. I added slid a few items in there to make the practices a bit more clear beyond the description of the practices. And if you understand how to get your mind to sort of abide with a calm and lucid mind on stuff in the body, then you can start doing things like 5 points meditation, where you're meditating on the top of the head, the hands, and the feet as the object of meditation. And if you can do this, then you can, at the grocery store, you can stand that way, and it doesn't look unusual. Um, you can walk that way. Once you get good at it, at first you have to be very slow, but eventually you can get it up to full speed. And then if you're doing yoga practice, Tai Chi practice, Bagua, Xingyi, 18 Lohan Palm, which, as you know, I talk about all the time, sort of like the granddaddy of Chinese internal martial arts, one of them at least. Uh, if you're doing something like this, you can do 5 points meditation while you are doing the whole form. So the body becomes a really important object of meditation because of the particular benefits that it has. It's also the bridge for those of you who are interested. Having really profound tactile awareness, bodily awareness, is the bridge to being able to do things like Qigong, Neigong, the internal Chinese health arts, and so on and so forth. Depends, and some Buddhist tantric stuff in my very limited understanding of such things from what I've read and heard, right? Depends upon you being able to be aware of your body at a very detailed way. So doing body scanning prepares you for this in the long run. You see? Okay. Mugao says greetings. Hello, Mugao. Oh, I like your little Facebook profile image there. Spirited Away, yes? Great film. What meditation technique are we talking about? Shikantaza, mantra chanting? Ah, okay. So today we did intensive breath and then we did body scanning meditation. So intensive breath is a very short practice, very high intensity, high intent practice, high sort of, if we were doing it in the Chinese sort of fashion, we might say it's on the yang side, very strong intent and mental force rather than basically no mental intent or force, right? So shikantaza exists over here, just sitting. Wait, what are we doing? We're not doing anything. We're just sitting. After you can get your posture right, all you're doing is just sitting there in the posture and doing nothing. And if you find that you're doing something, you try to stop. That's the only thing you're doing is trying to not do something. So if you have some ability on this side to generate an internal state that's of higher quality, then when you try to do these practices over here on this side, you have much more mental awareness, much more awareness of what's actually happening, and you can make these practices that are on the other. Oh, yes, yeah. So zazen, yeah. So on this side, on the far side over here of practices that are basically just sit and don't do anything, don't modify anything, and just sit as the entity you are, as the being you are, until realizations of who and what you are occur, right? So those are on the far end of the spectrum in terms of these practices. There are other practices that can make the quality of your mind and the mental factors involved in this practice stronger so that when you do these practices on this side, they work much more effectively, which is a funny thing to say about just sitting practices, but they do also technically depend upon your ability to be aware of and not forget what you intended to do. What you intended to do was not do anything. And if you forget that, then you start doing things. So that mental factor of not forgetting is called mindfulness, and you build it up through the practice, right? And so if you do these practices like intensive breath, it allows you to have more mindfulness when you do these practices, where you're trying to only do non-doing or have the intent of not intending or making the choice of not choosing and so forth. So having the ability to not forget what you intended to do increases your ability to do these kinds of practices on the other far extreme of the spectrum. So, Mugao, since I don't think I've seen you in the stream before, one of my main teachers for 12 years was a very good Zen adept, authorized in his lineage of Zen to teach, and um, was also subsequently recognized as a great practitioner in the Gelug Tibetan Buddhist tradition, in the tantric traditions of Gelug Tibetan Buddhism, and so he taught the techniques that I've learned and the techniques I teach. Not all of them, but mainly come through him. And he taught both of these approaches. One which is more like shikantaza, just sitting, and on the other side, these practices that have. Yeah, okay. See, this is a very good point. Let me circle back to that when I finish this first point, but don't go anywhere because this is really important, and I'm really glad you brought that up because it's a common problem. Very important. So there's a Tibetan version of just sitting practice that I teach in my way of teaching called Mahamudra, the Great Seal. But the way they teach it involves a number of sequential steps where you're learning basically how to do non doing with each one of your external senses individually, so that you don't have to learn how to do it with all of them all at once. You learn how to do it with the five external senses, and then you learn how to do it with the central mind, with consciousness, and then you combine them all together. And then you pull the awareness inside and you do it with consciousness only. So there's a sort of flow chart of being able to sort of do this with more and more and more greater ability to not do something in your cognitive fields, in your various sensory fields, because you're building up skill in each area, in not doing in a very particular region of experience, let's say. And then you start zooming out and you do them together. So this is so two things on just sitting practice. Just sitting practice is quite difficult on the one hand, and it's the easiest thing in the world on the other. It is the simplest thing to explain and very, very difficult to do. And I think where a lot of traditions, not traditions, but maybe practitioners, let's limit it to that, because I think the traditions are robust. But where individuals run into problems are a number of areas. One is if the body isn't comfortable, then your mind will spend the session looking at the pain and fighting the urge to adjust the posture or something like this rather than doing the practice, which is non-doing. If you're sitting there fighting the urge to move, that's doing something. You're not just sitting, you're fighting the urge to move. Or you're pointing your awareness at the pain and then going, "Oh, I'm not supposed to do that." Then you point it at the pain again, "Oh, I'm not supposed to do that." So the mind is actually just running around the whole time. It's not actually engaged in non-doing. So it's actually quite important before you do a lot of non-doing practice to have to have a body that's already relatively comfortable and an ability to sit that's already relatively mature, or that you're doing something to build that up as you're just sitting, because just sitting becomes effective probably when you're doing between 2 and 4 hours a day, right? That's when it starts to really become something incredible. And to do that kind of sitting, you frankly, you just need to have a body that works well. And to have a body that works well takes time and energy and work. So, for example, the 18 Lohan Palm system comes out of Shaolin Temple, and it was taught to the monks as something to make their body comfortable so that they could sit, you know? And then if the body got too uncomfortable from sitting, they could do 18 Lohan Palm, which was still developing concentration and blah, 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 and all these things that will make the next session they do stronger, better, more powerful. But it was also making the body comfortable again so they could go sit for 4 hours again. So that there are these physical systems in terms of Chan practice, right? In terms of Chan Buddhism, which is the mother of Zen, all of these physical systems that didn't make their way over to Japan, as far as I know, that were intended to make your body work well so that you can comfortably sit for 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours. So that's one aspect, is just making the body more comfortable. Now, if you didn't want to invest all that kind of time and energy into something like that, which some people don't want to, fine. Body scanning meditation, even according to cognitive science, makes the perception of pain less painful, or better to say, makes the perception of pain less mentally disturbing. So through training in body scanning before you do your just sitting, the pain that comes up in the session won't disturb your mind as much, because you've gained a skill of looking at the pain without the mind being disturbed by the pain. That's a skill you've built up before just sitting. So now when you come over here to do just sitting, that skill is mature. Furthermore, body scanning meditation makes the pain you feel less. So when they've done brain scans on people doing body scanning meditation who have chronic pain or acute pain, and pain in your knees from sitting too much is acute pain, they found that both chronic and acute pain, the actual pain signal that gets to your brain is less if you're doing body scanning meditation. So, like this, if you do body scanning training, then the pain is less while you're sitting, and your ability to deal with the pain without the mind becoming disturbed or distracted becomes more. So you're reducing pain and increasing your ability to deal with pain. Now imagine if you did that and combined it with something like Lohan Palm, where you're making the body perfect for meditation before you do the meditation. Well, now 2, 3, 4 hours becomes doable with less pain, and the pain that's there is more manageable. And if it gets out of control, you have a technique to make the body better so that you can go back to doing the practice, both in a standing position or a seated position, as the case may be. So this is the technology, so to speak, all the stuff that sort of didn't make its way into the Japanese traditions for these things, as far as I know, that are there in the Chinese traditions for these practices. Really, really incredible stuff. Now, the last point is this, and this is really, really important. If you don't have a fuller understanding of what meditation is and the faults of meditation, not like, oh, you're terrible, blah blah blah, not like the faults in that way, but the faults as in, what are the problems that will come up for everyone as they train in meditation. If you aren't aware of those, you can sit in those faults without knowing what they are and without knowing how to solve them, literally for years. When you doze off, that's a symptom of the second problem in meditation called laxity. Most people have the problem that their mind runs around and won't stay where they put it. And because it won't stay where it put it, they're never actually doing the practice, right? So since they're never actually doing the practice, or they're sort of working on the practice or whatever, that's the main thing they need to do, is deal with distraction. Now, once distraction becomes less, then your mind becomes distracted by the fact that your mind is calm. So instead of, for example, with just sitting practice, the mind is divided between the five external senses, and the mind should be lucidly, brightly aware of the five senses without getting drawn out by any of them to any one particular thing. And it's aware of, yeah, that's good. It's very good, Luck. And I did see your other comment, Luck, but if you could put it back in there, I'll respond to it in a minute. And it's aware of consciousness. So mental content is occurring here in front of the mind, and sometimes it goes away when you're doing just sitting practice, right? So the mind should be aware simultaneously of all of this stuff happening without getting stuck on any of it, which is a lot of activity, right? So once the mind can do that and the mental content starts to disappear, here's what happens. This is very sneaky. The mind's awareness goes like this and starts pointing at the fact that, oh, this is calm, this is nice, I like this. And when that happens, it pulls bandwidth away from the lucid, bright, fresh cognition of all of this stuff that you were previously aware of. And as it does that, the mind eventually falls asleep. So there are techniques when you're doing just sitting, for example, it's sort of like when you're driving and you get a little tired and you go, and you get a little tired behind the wheel and you, nope, I've got to be awake, right? So you can deliberately refresh to enhance the lucidity of mind, or just like we did today with body scanning, you can do a very quick body scan up to the top of the head and brighten the mind, and then you can go back to just sitting. But if you rest in a state of dullness and what's called laxity, then if you sit in laxity long enough, the mind just starts to nod off because you're training the mind to be less lucid, less aware of what's actually happening, which is the opposite of just sitting, right? If the mind is going, ooh, this internal state is nice, I like this, and it's distracting away from being lucidly aware of everything that's occurring, that's doing. It seems like non-doing because it's natural to do that. But that's part of the problem is that a lot of things that are natural to do uh, are actually doing, and there's nobody else there. There's nobody independent of the mind that's doing that's a doer. So if your mind is doing something, then the mind is doing, right? So it's not in a state of non-doing. So like this, one of the techniques that comes over from the Tibetan tradition also that can reduce laxity is Mahamudra style practice, where you learn how to zoom in on one of the five external senses, for example, and pull the awareness back out of the central awareness so that it's not getting too dull. So when the mind gets calm, I don't know how much this helps on camera, but when the mind gets calm, right? Let's say that I pull the mind back, and even though I'm talking, besides the intent to talk, pulling the intention back so that there's nothing that I'm doing. And then if I let my mind get distracted inwardly by the calmness, if I let my mind get distracted inwardly by the, like you can see already my words are like slightly not as good. If I just let my mind focus on the fact that it's calm, it's very, it's hard to keep track of what I'm doing. So if I then take my awareness and I pull it back up out of the calmness of the mind and I refocus, for example, on the visual awareness and take the entire visual field as an object, and I do non-doing just with vision, all of a sudden the mind is very bright again, and I didn't have to refresh it and do this and do that. I just do non-doing with a smaller part of my awareness that tends to pull my awareness out of the central consciousness where there's too much, where I'm getting distracted by the calmness. So I know this is a lot of information, but suffice it to say, there's a whole roadmap of stuff where you can learn how to work with your mind and the problems that are coming up that will enhance your ability to sit longer and turn your non-doing practice into something more and more profound, because you can deal with the problems that come up and you can do more intensive kinds of practice with each aspect of your being in regards to non-doing, and then combine them together until there's no doing or very little doing besides the act of non-doing in any of your six fields. So like this is the Mahamudra approach. And it works very well. That's why I teach it, and the great beings in their wisdom say you can even teach this to beginners and it will help them. So it's one of the techniques that I teach to, relatively speaking, to beginners after gaining some of these other skills. Right. Yes. So hopefully that helps. I'm a big fan of just sitting practice. I do a fair amount of that kind of practice, and there are a lot of tools. There are a lot of tools that come over from the Chinese traditions that are meant to enhance and reinforce and make that practice really function well. That, as far as I've seen, they just didn't make their way over to the Japanese Zen tradition because it was a sort of a tighter transmission line, I suppose. You know, it's like they got this stream of it, but there was a whole library that came along with it, and they didn't take the whole library. Hopefully you can hear me through the camera microphone. My headset just died on me. Yeah, yeah. This can, yeah, it's interesting. Headaches are interesting because depending upon the practice you're doing, it can make headaches better or it can make them worse. Depends on what you're doing. A lot of practices we do in Buddhism tend to bring more sort of blood and so forth, more energy, more chi to the head, which can make you'll feel pressure in your head, pressure behind your eyes. You may get little headaches. A lot of my students get this in the beginning because of the first practice that we do. Body scanning can help to spread that back out so that it's not as intense. And once your system gets used to it, it's not as bad. Well, in any case, so long story short, Mugao, I would say if you had a couple more tools in your toolkit, then you could, if you were sitting for an hour or 2 hours or 4 hours or whatever your sessions are in daily life and in retreat, if you're sitting for long periods of time, you can, if you had some of these other tools, you'd be able to address problems as they come up, whether those are physical problems or they're mental problems or whatever, so that you can make this time, again, a bit funny to say with just sitting practice, but you can make it more productive, right? You can do more non-doing because you're not distracted by the body or you're not falling prey to one of the faults of meditation that stop you from actually doing the practice. So yeah, I would, if you'd like to jump into the training stuff we're doing, I'd be happy to have you. This class is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then if you scroll up in the chat, if you want to do it these techniques a bit more full on, you could join the school course that I have for this. And all the same information is available for free on YouTube, by the way. And I'm happy to get on the phone with you and talk to you about whatever as you have time to help you with this stuff. But yeah, you know, I really do want people to succeed in this stuff. And if you'd like a bit more direction in terms of the physical aspects, in terms of the mental aspects, whatever, I'm here and available. That's why I do what I do. Okay. So Luck said that had a dream with me in it. I wish I had more vivid dreams. My dreams are very quiet. And then Luck said is doing intensive breath lying down is difficult. Yeah, yeah. One of my teachers recommended recently that I do some practice laying down. So I'm working on a particular practice right now that's is quite demanding physically in addition to being demanding mentally. And my teacher recommended that I try it in different positions because it sort of does different things to you if you're in different positions. And laying down was very interesting. And probably doesn't help much to talk about that. Anyways, thank you all for being here. Hope to see you again Friday. Tomorrow, I'll probably do, since I'm just doing this Monday, Wednesday, Friday now, tomorrow probably I'll do an open Q&A. I'm not sure if I'll do it midday or if I'll do it in the evening. Just stay tuned. And thank you all for being here.
hope to see you again very soon. And yeah, Mugao, if you want more information, scroll up to the top of the chat or go down below the video. There's ways to get in touch with me there. Be happy to carry on with the conversation. Oh, we've got a couple more things coming in. Yeah, see, that's interesting. Yeah, Soto can be a little bit more forgiving than Rinzai. Uh, yeah, I mean, here's the thing, right? If you can learn how to manage your body and your mind a little bit better and to make the body more comfortable for sitting, then you can very easily, relatively speaking, very easily get to sitting for an hour, 2 hours. 3 or 4 hours is a bit more difficult, but um, yeah, I mean, it's been my experience that if you learn how to manage your body better and you make the body function better, and in particular, if you have a system that you're learning that brings these aspects together, where it's not like, oh, I go to the gym and I work out and then whatever. But no. The actual exercises you're doing are custom tailored and designed to make the whole system function better for meditation, right? That's why they're there. So 18 Lohan Palm linked at the top, that's what that whole system is for. It has a martial art attached to it, but the martial art is like, okay, if you get attacked by somebody, it would be better if you didn't die, because then you'd have to start over on your next rebirth. So try to defend yourself as best you can without getting killed, so that you can carry on with your practice, right? It's not like how to say, not full on. So it has a martial art aspect. It's an internal Chinese martial art, but then mainly it's meant to make the body absolutely perfect for meditation while training you in meditation for and during those exercises. So trying to think of a good example. So with standing practice, for example, right? I'll do it sitting so that I don't have to adjust my desk and all this. But standing practice, for example, if I have my hands resting in this position, I'm training all of the little muscles and things that will be required because I put my spine in exactly the same position. I get all the tissue stretched out in a way that will work really well for meditation. And holding my arms in this position, if you look, when I lower the elbow, this is the same position that I'll have the arm in, roughly speaking, when I'm doing my seated practice, right? Same thing if I have my hands resting in a downward position, I'm training all of the tissue in a more demanding circumstance to hold my body in the position it's in that will be beneficial for meditation. And then if I'm doing other kinds of exercises like this, stretching I don't know if you guys can see this, but if I open my back, watch my elbows. See how my elbows stretch out? Can you see that on camera? So like this, if I can learn how to open the tissue in the upper back and the elbow and the wrist and the palm while standing and doing these kinds of postures, now I can learn how to make all of that tissue at the upper part of the back be able to move and open and close and do what it should do as a human body, so that when I'm sitting here, I have the skill to be able to go, okay, the upper back isn't functioning the right way. This is distracting my mind. Okay, I'll open that and close it. Okay, now it's working right, back to meditation. So I don't have to get up and do Kinhan. Oh, right hip is not working. Okay, open, close, open, close. Okay, now it's functioning right, back to the session. And I can do that because you're training in body scanning also, you take the awareness, put it in that part, do that thing, and then come back to the meditation object or the meditation activity, all while maintaining a state of concentration. You see it? So you don't have to leave the session and you don't have to disturb the really sort of refined state of mind, hopefully, that you have generated through putting in an hour's worth of work. Because even walking, if you're doing really subtle types of practice, even getting up to walk around will make the mind less subtle because you have to do stuff. Okay. Well, anyways, hopefully this makes sense, Hopefully this makes some sense. Let's talk Buddhism. Oh, okay. Yeah, that'd be interesting. I need to check that out. Okay. Antonio says, what would you say about having an out-of-body experience during meditation? So I haven't ever had an out-of-body experience during meditation, but I know of some people who have. And it's possible with certain types of practice that are designed in that way for it to happen, or it's more likely to happen. I don't know what to say about it exactly, but it's actually seen as not a very good thing, because if you've ejected your mind from the body for a period of time, there's a certain cost to that in terms of the vital energies of the system. And if you do a lot of that, then you have to expend a lot of these things that keep you alive, according to at least the systems that I've looked at and studied. And so this is an activity that, generally speaking, is seen to be as sort of not one that nourishes life. And so if you want the system to last a long time, as long, you could get hit by a bus any day, but if you want the system to last a long time, you're trying to retain and pull in and nourish the amount of vitality and life that's in the system and make everything function as best that it can so that you have more time to complete the practices before everything starts breaking down. So yeah, I mean, there are some practices like the end stages of the 18 Lohan system involves a practice that's very similar to POA in the Tibetan practices, transference of consciousness, very similar to POA, where you send the central sort of seed of the mind, let's say, the central mind up out of the top of the head, and then you complete your meditation from here in the final part of the meditation where your mind is actually resting above your head. And then things are happening. Okay. Does meditation bring more luck? I don't know. That's an interesting question. I mean, in theory, if you're think about it not just in terms of luck, but think about it in terms of what your mind is and what it's doing, right? So let's say that you have a lot of anger, let's say you have a lot of lust, let's say you have a lot of envy, let's say you have a lot of easily distractible mind, that you don't have a lot of determination, that you're very arrogant, that, let's just say you were a mass of emotional problems and all of this. Your life is going to be less unlucky, probably, because opportunities, you miss these opportunities because you're too arrogant. You could have had a great opportunity to do something, but you go, oh, I know better than everybody. And then over here, you could have had an opportunity to train in this or do this or make this money or meet this person or marry this person or whatever. But instead of doing that, you got really angry and blew up the whole situation. Or over here, you were working on something that was taking you further down a path of training or financial well-being or your relationships being better or whatever. And then you started watching, I don't know, some kind of show on YouTube where somebody already had the things you want, and you got so envious that you got completely discouraged with your activity and quit doing the thing because you had so much envy that somebody already had it or whatever, right? And then you lose that opportunity. So you can see like this. The more, or you're very distractible, so you're trying to do some kind of important thing, either conventional or spiritual, but your mind is running all over the place and never really does the thing. So like this, the more negative qualities you have in your mind, the less lucky you're probably going to be. Obviously not a universal rule, but if you don't have very much determination, if you're really arrogant, if your mind's really angry, if your attention is really unstable, etc., 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 you won't have as much luck because you'll miss all of these opportunities that could have taken you further because of your own limitations as a person. So training in meditation starting to get your mind under control means that one, you'll be more observant and you'll notice stuff that would be beneficial and you'll seek it out and you'll do it more. But two, all of these problems that would have arisen while you were doing things that are beneficial for yourself, for others, in terms of your spiritual practice, both conventionally and ultimately, you don't miss as many things, you don't miss as many opportunities because your mind is more under control. So while you're doing stuff, it has more meaning, more power, more force, and you screw it up a lot less, right? So if you want to call that luck, you can call it luck. There's also the factor of this idea of karma, but karma is a bit complex because sometimes you do a lot of practice and it makes really, really horrible karmas that were like massive. They become relatively smaller and then they ripen as something bad. But relatively speaking, it's like, you get a health condition that's not good instead of having 400 rebirths as a hungry ghost, right? And you'll never know that was the reason, but you have negative karma that sometimes ripens because you're doing a lot of practice. This is very common. I did a retreat a couple of years ago. All sorts of bad stuff happened. I'll tell you one thing. So I ended up, during this retreat and immediately after this retreat, I ended up spraining both of my ankles. So I was doing retreat, and about halfway through, I think, where I was doing a lot of sitting. So, of course, now my ankles are screwed up to do all my sitting. But I sprained my ankle really badly. And then I was either towards the end of the retreat or right after, I then sprained my other ankle really badly. So I had 2 feet, 2 legs that didn't work. And then on top of that, this is really interesting. My wife reminded me of this recently, so I figured I'd tell you guys. But in the room where I was doing my meditation, and this has never happened. We've lived in this neighborhood 3 years. This has never happened before. But during the retreat, a huge number of flies invaded our house and were mostly collected on the windows in the room where I was doing my meditation practice. Really unusual, as if something was dead inside the room, but there was nothing dead there. It's really interesting, right? And then I developed a health problem during the retreat. I won't tell you what kind, but was really uncomfortable and made sitting really uncomfortable. Man, it was really rough, really rough. So sometimes you do practice and lots of bad stuff happens, but from the point of view of the tradition, it's because you took karmas that were really huge and negative and you shrunk them down basically relative to your other karma, your good karma, they become very small and then they ripen as something. Okay. So in terms of karma, good stuff's going to happen, bad stuff's going to happen. You can't avoid it. Your practice overall will make more good stuff happen in the long run. But in the short run, bad things can happen and often do. Oh, interesting. Focus breathing and body scan 14 days with a young person, seeing much improvement. Oh, I'm really glad to hear that, Luck. Really glad to hear that. Yeah, it really works. These are techniques that have, well, body scanning has a lot of data behind it. Intensive breath doesn't have any study yet, but anyways, yeah. Also, here's the thing: don't worry too much about making your negative karmas ripen by doing practice, because negative karmas are going to ripen anyway. Wouldn't you rather that they be smaller? Think about it like that, right? Yes, your karma. Maybe you broke your arm, really horrible, terrible, but maybe that injury was going to be 10 times worse, breaking all your limbs, right? You don't know. Maybe that karma was going to ripen in this lifetime and be really horrifically bad. And instead, it's like you're in a cast for a year and half a year or whatever, and then the arm is a little bit funky for 2 or 3 years, but you do all the exercises, and then it's mostly okay. There's one karma gone. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Okay. What are my thoughts on Eastern Orthodox? I'm not as familiar with their esoteric practices, let's say their Gnostic aspects of their practice, if they have them. I've heard that Eastern Orthodox is a very deep tradition and has like a huge number of layers to it that outsiders are not aware of. And I've heard that those layers go really deep into meditation training and other things, even though from what I've seen, they don't describe them in quite those terms. One of my students is Eastern Orthodox and has told me that the stuff that I teach, which is the 5 foundation stuff, has really improved his Orthodox practice. So, that makes me happy. It makes me happy if people are doing any of this stuff in the modern world because it's so difficult to do. Yeah, I agree with you, Cookie. We all do that to a degree. Antonio, any virtue that you do begins to, relatively speaking, reduce the power and force of your negative karma. So this is really important. There's a sutta in the Pali Canon called the Salt Crystal Sutta. And basically, the Buddha said, think you can, to boil it down, he said, you can think about your non-virtues as being like a salt crystal. So if you took a little bit of salt and you put it into a glass of water and you taste it, it tastes really salty. If you take that same amount of salt and throw it into the Ganges River and then taste the Ganges River, it doesn't taste salty at all. So, like this, your negative karma from the past and from this lifetime, if you accumulate a huge amount of virtue, it's like having the Ganges River there or a big lake of fresh water there, so that your negative karma ends up being able to ripen as very small things, relatively speaking. And small might still be quite large. That being said, if you didn't do that, right, and then all of these negative karmas would be like putting that same amount of salt into a glass of water. And the ways that they'll ripen in negative ways in this life and in future lives will be much greater suffering, according to the Buddha. So by increasing your virtue, training in ethics, training in concentration, training in wisdom, then all of your other negative karmas, according to the Buddha, relatively speaking, they become smaller and they can ripen as smaller things instead of really big things. But again, small is a relative term because maybe you have a business venture and it blows up in your face and you're depressed for 8 months. Or maybe you get a divorce, or maybe your kid gets sick. Maybe you get sick and it lasts for years. That, relatively speaking, this seems like a really huge thing that's happened. But maybe that karma that was related to that, because you've accumulated a fair amount of virtue, would have created, entire lifetimes of not having anything. This is the argument. So in a way, they say, well, as a practitioner, if you've been at it for a while, you can rejoice and go, oh, there's one more negative karma out the window. I got that one. It's done now. Oh, yeah, doing my best to do some practice today. Speaking of which, my friends, my dear ones, I have to jump into a class with one of my teachers in a few minutes, and I need to charge these to do that. So I will call it a day. Thank you all for being here. And this was a good class. We went an unexpected way in Q&A, but I think it was good. Okay, thank you all for being here. Hope to see you again soon. Try not to disappear before I do. Okay, cheers.